Okay.
This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Merlinda Smith. And I'm bringing Melinda a guest today that a very good friend of mine also had on his podcast. And that good friend of ours is Brent Cassidy. And Brent Cassidy has a podcast called Nightmare Success. And if you go out to Brent's website, and I will put that in the show notes, you'll find out that Brent was a white collar worker who ended up in prison. And he has learned a lot from his time in prison. And he realized there are so many good people who accidentally go wrong. And so he's been sharing their stories. When I heard the story of our guest today, Jim Brock, I knew that we had to have him on because, as Jim will probably tell us, his early life wasn't the best setup for success. However, he learned success while in prison. And so, Melinda, we're taking a little different path today because we usually talk about health issues, how we overcome those things, and how our life just gets, how we can make our life good. Well, guess what? That's what Jim's doing. So, Jim, welcome to Heart Mojo.
Welcome.
And give us a little background about what it was like even before prison, because from what I understand, life just wasn't the best.
No, it actually wasn't. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, with a single mom. And my dad, who I never knew, just came through St. Louis and met my mom. And they had my sister. And then when my mom was pregnant with me, he took off. So my mom pretty much raised me my whole life. It wasn't a real bad childhood. I didn't feel like it was a bad childhood. She got me involved in sports. That seemed to be like my escape from everything. It's what I love to do. She got me involved in football, baseball, and later on I got myself involved with soccer. But it was just a lot of moving around. I mean, it was a struggle for my mom. At the time, I didn't know she was sacrificing a lot.
We're having a few internet
really
issues.
struggling to raise two kids. And basically at about, am I freezing up?
On and off, but that's okay. Our listeners understand.
So about 14, I started getting in trouble, just little stuff at school. And then I started skipping school. And then at 15, I guess I was 15, 16, I tried my first alcohol and it was amazing. I mean, everything that I was going through and dealing with just got erased. And it was like the best feeling in the world. It was like I found that secret potion or drink that just took everything away. And as high school went on, I was just drinking like everybody else. And I was playing soccer in high school and I wasn't, I was with the popular kids. And I just thought, we were just at parties and drinking but it was doing things to me different. I started getting into more trouble and staying out late. And I really didn't have the rules that they all had because it was just my mom and she was working 2, 3 jobs. So she really wasn't there to discipline me. And I was angry. I was kind of an angry kid. I didn't really see any problem with it. I see people get angry, but later on I found out that I I was carrying around a lot of anger and just getting into trouble. And at 16, 17 years old, I quit school and the troubles just got worse. And that was pretty much my childhood.
So you had your mother who was doing her best, being around when she could be, you know, caring for you and your sister, uh, earning her way. But you obviously realized that there was something missing in that household that sort of made you angry, I assume.
Well, later on, it really, I think it was during my time in prison when I was really working on the issues that I felt that I needed to work on. That I realized a lot of my anger emotions were I really miss my dad, having a dad, especially when you're going to games and practices and you're seeing all the other kids' dads there. And it really started to weigh on
Did your mom come to your sporting activities?
me. She did when she could, which was every now and then. But like I said, she was working a lot.
Mhm.
So it it wasn't a lot. It was me at my friends' houses and knowing I got along with their dads just great. I mean, my relationship with like the other teammates' dads was really good. And I always envied that. And when I went home and that wasn't there, and sometimes, a lot of times, my mom wasn't even there, I guess I think that's where a lot of this kind of just took off and just set me down a path that wasn't good.
Did you have any other role models that were men, like your grandfather, an uncle, anybody like that?
I had a grandpa that we would go visit. He was about 2, 3 hours from St. Louis, and he was a real bad alcoholic.
Oh.
He wasn't mean. I liked going out there. They lived like in the country. So I used to like going down to the creek and hanging out on his property, but we didn't really have a relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was drinking pretty much the whole time we were there.
No, I
There,
understand. I had
there
that
wasn't,
similar background.
yeah, there really wasn't a role model until I guess about 16, 15, 16. And we moved out to a different suburb, which was the Lindbergh High School District. And we moved right next door to, which is still a great friend of mine and kind of a father figure to me, Eric Delabar. And he got me into soccer. He used to play professional and he's kind of became like a role model to me. But at that point, I think I was just off on a path that I don't know that it could have been stopped. Maybe it could have if I would have just listened maybe a little bit more, but as I see it now,
Yeah.
I think at 16, set by 17, I was pretty much an alcoholic and didn't know
Mhm.
So what is it that
That would make sense if you started thinking. Go ahead.
what all developed that sent you to prison?
it. Well, the drinking became more frequent. I quit school. They told me that I was here. And then I mean, my junior year, I made first team. And this was the biggest school district probably in the Missouri area. And they told me I couldn't play. And that was the only place that I really felt like normal. It was like my place that it was kind of like the drinking. The feel was like
Right.
where I was only happy. And when they told me I couldn't play, I quit school that very next day, and the drinking just became more. I ended somehow managed to get my GED the next year and go play 1 year at junior college, but that just became a big party too. And then later on, cocaine kind of wrapped me up pretty good.
So what I'm hearing is the alcohol and the drugs.
And one
That
night,
was
I could
your
remember I was struggling
yeah.
with
So
the
the alcohol and the drugs
drinking
were your
bills.
salvation.
Yes. And then I met someone and my son's mom, and my son was born. And I think that it made me happy, but then at the same time, it put more pressure on the lifestyle that I was already living. And everything just went out of control. And one night I just pulled over and I started walking and I started finding unlocked doors. And at this time, I was so far in debt, had no money, really no place to live. And my drug habit was probably at $500 a day. And I started finding unlocked doors. And I would go in the kitchen area and I would take a purse or wallet, whatever was in the kitchen. And any means of cash right there and leave right be no property damage. And later on, when I was caught, they told me that I went into 30 to 40 homes. And I was given a 25-year sentence. And I was told that I would have to do, with all the little trouble that I got into up until then, would have to serve 20 years of that
You
before I was
already
eligible for
18?
parole.
Were you already 18?
Yeah, at this time, this was after junior college, and then there was like 5 or 6 years of DWIs and writing bad checks. So this was like 28 when this started, and I went to prison at 29, and I got out right before my 50th birthday,
Wow.
18 months ago.
So tell us a little bit about the prison experience, because many of the podcasts that I've listened to that Brett has done, I've been amazed to find out how much rehabilitation is available, but not offered to everybody. Am I correct?
It's yeah, it's kind of a bad, I guess, ridiculous setup. I'll get to what they offer, and then I can kind of get you to where I was.
Sure.
I immediately knew that they weren't they weren't there to rehabilitate me. They were just there to put me up on a shelf, do my time, and then let me go. I've been in and out of jail and prison for the checks and for the drinking. I knew they weren't there to help me. So I knew that I had to figure something out. But what they do is they bring you into prison. They strip you of everything. You go in a hallway naked, you get sprayed with lice, and you're sent to what's called it's a prison where they evaluate you for what's supposed to be 30 days. But it's so overcrowded, people are staying there 6 months to a year. And this is just like a temporary prison, like diagnostic place. And they decide, so once they figure out who you are and what your crimes are and what type of person you are, they pick a prison for you, they send you there. And normally when you go get to your prison, they make you work in food service. They make you just get on a line and serve meals to the rest of the inmates. and they require you to do that for like 6 months. And then to get any kind of trail, you have an out date or you're a year short from your release on paper. And it's so crowded that you'll be lucky to get to the prison that's offering the trade that you're trying to get to. And a lot of them are outdated. So basically is what I always told the guys. If you want to better yourself, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to, if it's alcohol, if it's drugs, you're going to have to go to meetings. You're going to have to talk about the issues. You're going to have to, and it's not easy to do in prison. Guys don't want to be vulnerable. You're trying to be in there and surviving. And to be vulnerable and talk about things is not easy for a lot of guys. It's not easy for most men out here.
Right.
To talk about the problems that they're going. They want to put on a freeze. Can y'all still hear me? Am I here?
Yes, you are.
So I got to prison, and I didn't mention this to you, but I mentioned it to Brent at the same time that I was sentenced to 25 years. My son was 4 years old now because I spent a couple years in the county waiting sentencing. And then at the same time I got to 25 years, I found out that he was stage 4 cancer.
Oh my.
So this was like all in the same couple weeks apart. And now I'm facing 20 years. I got a son that's got a 15% chance to live. And I'm going to try to figure this out and do it right the next time, which is 2 decades away. But my first initial reaction was just to end it. And that was my plan 2-3 days after court. And could I get enough courage to do that? Could I get one thing back in my life and just end it? And they kept coming with more warrants. They kept calling me out. And I think it was the third day that I was just like, I got to get this done. I got to end it. And they called me out again. And I told them, I said, I do not want to see any more officers. I don't care about any more warrants. They can send them to the court. I'm not going out there and seeing nobody. And there was a white shirt that came back in and said, this is not the police. This is not the detectives. Somebody is here to see you. And I go out there and they send me in this room. And I get in this room, this little lady, she's probably like 4'9" tops, steps up to me and she says, do you remember me? And I said, yeah, you're Dr. Mary Ann Walker. You're the one I gave all my books to in high school and said I quit. She's like, yeah, well, now I'm retired from the Lindbergh School District and I work with the women down on the 4th floor. I was on the 8th floor. And I saw your story on the news last night and I just came up here to see if you were all right. And that was probably that night. And now I always believed in God. I never had a religion. I never went to church, but all my friends, especially in the St. Louis area, they were Catholic. Their parents were Catholic. I went to a lot of Catholic masses. So I knew who God was. And I used to call on God, but didn't really understand it. But that night I just went back to the cell and I got on I was probably up that entire night, just on my knees crying. And that's when things changed for me. I got up that next day. I went to a meeting that night. Actually a sister from the Catholic in the Clayton area where I was staying came up and started counseling me 2, 3 times a week for Luke Farr series. 9 months of studies. I became Catholic. I got baptized at the county jail. And from then on with AA and my friends in AA, I just started changing my life and just started knocking out the days and waking up every day and going all these self-help classes, anything I could just reach for it. And some of them we even started out in the yard. We just got groups together and just started, just talking about issues and things we were going through. And of course I kept the job and the days just started going by. And finally, I guess it was 2014, they finally dropped my level and I got out of the maximum security prison and I was transferred to a prison near St. Louis, Missouri Eastern Pacific. And I guess it was my first few months there, Washington University had a flyer on the wall that they were going to start a pilot program, college classes, something that I was seeking out for the first 12 years of my incarceration, something to better myself. And I applied with 100 and something other guys and somehow got accepted. And I was now officially a WashU student, taking classes for credit on the inside. The professors from WashU would actually come into the prison for 3 hours. We would do 3-hour classes instead of 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour because of the drive. And just kept knocking out classes and got my associate degree. I was one of the first 10 to get their associate degrees from WashU. We had a big graduation. And I told my advisor, I said, well, I did it. I'm done. She says, no, you're not. And they brought on more classes and more professors signed up. And then that Pacific prison is actually a satellite of WashU now, a satellite college of WashU. And kept knocking out classes. And I came home while I was working on my last 3 classes and my capstone in 2020 and graduated on campus with all the other students in May of 21 at Washington University in St. Louis.
So let me ask you
Well,
this
that's-
question, Jim. You were taking these classes, getting your degree, bettering yourself. What did you see yourself doing when you got out? Did you have a plan?
Well, I'll back up a little bit. While I was about the same time I started WashU, Stray Rescue of St. Louis had a dog program that was probably at Pacific, probably a year, 6 months to a year before I got there. I got accepted into that program. And they used to come in and teach training twice a week. And they would bring in probably 6 to 10 of their worst dogs that there are no kill shelter. So these are dogs that would stay in the kennels for the rest of their lives. They couldn't be adopted. Because they would be liable. They were not good dogs. Those are the dogs they brought us. And we were taught how to train with these dogs. And these dogs hated dogs. Some of them hated people. And I had a couple that hated me for the first week. But they were with me in the cell 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And they would go to classes with me. They would go everywhere but to eat or the visiting room or to medical. Everywhere else, this dog would be with me. And I trained, we'd have them for 3 months, each dog. I did 16 of them. And I fell in love with the program. I fell in love with it for a couple of reasons, but the main reason, I saw the change that it brought on me. It wasn't I wasn't so focused on me and my feelings and what Jim needed and Jim this and Jim that. I was responsible for someone else now. I was responsible for this dog. And it just I think the dogs just taught me how to be a better human being and to start reaching out for others and what they need. And because you're always looking for the dog, like, does it have to go outside? Does it have to eat? No, don't jump on people. No, don't do this. I mean, you actually, it was like parenting 24 hours a day. And
Well,
we were, and the dogs were fighting. It was chaos sometimes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, dogs respond to kindness. So I think, the discipline of it, but also the kindness that you learn to develop. Like you said, you were focusing on the dog, not on yourself, right? So you imparted
Yeah.
kindness to
Yes.
these animals, and eventually, I'm assuming they responded, right?
They responded in a big way. And I can remember the first one they gave me. They told me, we want you to learn training with this dog, but it'll never be in a home. And for some reason, I don't know if she told me that as a challenge because she knew how I was, because I had been doing some little training classes before I actually got to have a dog. But I was always like, if you tell me this, I'm going to do more. And I handed that dog off to a 4-year-old girl and her mom and dad, and
Oh,
felt comfortable doing it. This dog did a dramatic change in 3 months. And that's the second thing I was going to tell you. I started to relate the dogs to me and the other guys, how they were abandoned, abused, and just mistreated and just lost out there in society with no direction and nobody to love them. Now, I'm not saying that my mom didn't love me, but did she really have the time to love me like she wanted to? Um, so that's why now it has become my dream to open a doggy daycare and have boarding and eventually have a rescue, which is going to take a lot bigger place and a lot more money. But I'm looking at a couple buildings now. I do in-home training. The word of mouth from what I was doing there kind of traveled out here, and I do in-home training now along with my WashU job and a driving job. So I'm doing 3 things now, 3 hats, and that's kind of how all that came about.
So one of the things that I've heard you talk about is um, not everybody really has the ability to get the training, to get the rehab. Um, so, is there anything that we on the outside can do to make it happen so that individuals can come out like you have and, you know, be part of our community?
I'm sorry, you froze up again.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think are I'm getting the unstable message now. Can you hear me?
I can
Yeah.
hear you. Yep.
Well, when I got out, WashU gave me a job as the alumni coordinator. And I saw, yes, you guys can do a whole lot of things, and the public can do a whole lot of things. And I think what people don't know is our prisons are filled with poverty, people of poverty, people that don't have money. And I hear it all the time when I'm out at these companies because I deliver paychecks and ADPs to some big companies in St. Louis. And guys will tell me, I could have went to prison. I could have been in the same situation as you. I said, yeah, but you had the money to get out of it, didn't you? Well, my parents did. So what you see in prison is a lot of guys that had the single home never really had much. Can you still hear me?
Yep, we can hear
And
you
what our
now.
prisons are also filled with is a lot of a lot of repeat
Mm.
offenders. And the reason for I feel, and a lot of our guys in our program feel of, and you need to report some of them every week, some of them every 2 weeks, and you have to get here. Well, one thing is I I can't get a job because they're not going to hire me because I got a felony. I
Mhm.
can't get an apartment because I don't have any credit and I got the background check. I won't get through the background check. And I can't get a car because I don't have any credit because I've been in prison and I don't have a family. So they're put back in a situation worse off than when they were when they went in. Because
Right.
now they have this prison sentence attached to them. And they have the stigma of the felon on their record now. So the situation just got worse for them. So I believe that, and I see it in some places, like with renting an apartment. If I don't think a guy should just not be able to rent an apartment just because of his past. If we looked at everybody's past and everything that they did, there'd be a whole lot of people that wouldn't be eligible for the apartment. So I think housing and employment, giving guys chances, and just society being more open and not so closed-minded when it just becomes just because this guy went to prison. I tell my prison story to everybody, and if they don't accept it, I don't. It doesn't bother me. I'll go on to the next person until. But yeah, I think we need to be more forgiving of the circumstance and understand what's really going on.
I know in Cleveland, we do have a restaurant that deliberately they work with the prison system and they bring them out and they teach them a trade so that they can get a job. To your point, it's hard to get a job. They bring them through the restaurant industry. It's a very popular location. Do you remember the name, Karen?
Not offhand, I don't know.
Yeah, it's at Shaker Square. But yeah, in fact, they have two. I think they have two restaurants and a catering service. And everybody that works for them came out of the prison system. So it's a nice entry, and jobs are so needed in that field right now, especially now.
Oh
So
yeah.
we do have some of that, but I think to your point, there needs to be more of that. There needs to be more people who are willing to work with people coming out of prison, knowing that they really don't want to go back. Because I think that's why they go back, right? They can't get a job, they can't find a place to live. So what are you going to do? You're going to take it.
Well, they go back right down that little rut road that they know. They go back to what they know,
Right.
and they can't get out of it. And it's sad. But I think, like I tell the guys now, because I communicate with the guys on the inside, and I have a check-in meeting with all our alumni on Wednesdays out here. And I tell them, and especially tell the guys on the inside, these companies are in a desperate situation right now. They pretty much, a lot of them have to ignore, if they had one before, the felony restriction because they need workers.
Right.
So we're in a situation now where we can have the opportunity to change a lot of people's minds. And at 4:05, and I'm at my Westport warehouse by 5:30, I set off every day to change somebody's perception of who we are. And I try to get to one person every day and just continue to do what I do and just and I see some of our guys are following. We have a restaurant right here near where I live that, that the owner there is hired two of our guys and wants to know more about our program, kind of like the restaurant you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're doing the same thing. They're following my lead, and they're changing people's minds and hearts about guys that have been to prison and guys that have a criminal record, that they just need a shot.
We have also a program called the Women in Transition Program at our local Tri-C College. And there are many people that come, many women that come into that program out of the prison system. Because people, focus many times on the men coming out, but there are women coming out of the system as well. And they're just as vulnerable, if not more so in some ways. And they need to get a profession that works for them. So many of them already have children. So when they come back out, not only do they have themselves to take care of, but their children who've been living on the outside, right, for however long they were in.
Right.
So I think that's something else we offer. And if we could have more of that available in our college system, once you're out, not just when you're in, but when you're out, would be very helpful to move people
Absolutely.
forward.
Well,
I think
Jim,
you've hit,
yeah.
no, I was going to say, I think you've hit the challenge of what you had in your life head on. And I really commend you for doing that. Hopefully somebody listens to your story and says, this is me, or it could be me, or, take solace in what you've been able to do and that they can move forward too.
Well, yeah, all my trouble started with DWIs. And all I did was have some drinks at a bar, and an officer was watching that bar on all 3 of my DWIs. So if somebody took a drink and got in their car from a bar, you could be in the same situation as I am. And I tell a lot of that because that's exactly where it started. And actually, the DWIs are what had me doing the 20 years because they held my previous felony against me to enhance this felony. So anybody that's taken a drink and gotten their vehicle could be in my situation.
Right. Well, let me ask you this.
And I think there's millions and millions of people that have done that.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. We've all done it. We've all done it. We've had a drink and gotten in the car.
Right.
Let me ask you this. If you hadn't gone to prison, where do you think you'd be today?
Somebody asked me that a couple months ago, and my answer to that was, right now, I'm grateful for the 20 years that I did on the inside. It sounds crazy, but I didn't want to be the guy that I used to be, and I don't think that I would have worked on the issues that I had, or maybe never even found them out, and continue to be an alcoholic. I'm just going to say how it is, asshole, my entire life, and not really cared about others, and probably wouldn't have gotten so close to the love of dogs and that part of it. And I definitely wouldn't have got my degree. A lot of who, by the way, I think we're coming up on 15 years cancer free after his second and third round of
Oh, that's
cancer.
great.
He's a 3-time cancer survivor now.
Wow.
Well, I think the journey that you went on was necessary for you. So sometimes when we see this negative thing happen, I mean, I ended up with this podcast because I had a cancer journey. That's how I ended up coming to this point. And I wouldn't go back and I wouldn't change it because I learned so much. I think it made me a better person. It allowed me to help more people. And I think that's what you're doing too. So the fact that you're grateful for your journey is a big piece of understanding where you needed to be at this point in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And my son kind of paved the way on that one with me because he said his journey has, helped him. I mean, he beat it the 3rd time, he just started doing all these dance marathons at these colleges and raising money for Children's Miracle Network. And he was actually the youngest board member of Children's Miracle Network.
Wow.
And he's got a story that you guys ought to have him on sometime.
We actually should. Absolutely.
He's got a story that kills mine. I mean, this kid is just what he's done and what he's overcome.
Well, and that's why I asked Melinda to do this series.
And how many kids that he's helped along the way. But yeah. So
Well,
I talked about it a little bit with Brent. He's become like my role model. And through those 20 years, seeing the things that he had to endure and go through, especially at 4 years old. I mean, 20 rounds of chemo and radiation at 4 years old. Can
Yeah.
you imagine that?
no.
No.
And then a year later, 6 more rounds.
Well, we're grateful that he is doing well. And we're grateful that you're doing well. So, Melinda, before we close out, I think, I will reach out to
The third
Jim.
time they took out his thyroid because it got his thyroid.
We're going to reach out to you, Jim, so we can have your son on as well.
Absolutely.
And talk about his journey.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for sharing with us because, many of our listeners, they just may know of somebody who's struggling.
Mhm.
And, sometimes it just takes.
And it's never too late.
No. And a kind word to get them on the right path. So,
well,
thank
and
you.
hearing your story will probably give somebody hope. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
Instead of looking at, you took a 20-year sentence and made something
I
of
think
yourself
well,
during
Brent
that
and I
20
talked
years.
about it. I was in a physical prison, but there's a lot of people out here that are in prison and don't even realize it, and they're trapped.
Right.
They're in a jail cell too. You just can't see it. And
Right.
my story and ending with him was it's never too late. I'm starting my life over at 50 years old. And so what? I just, I can do it the right way this time.
That's wonderful.
It is. Well, thank you for being on. We appreciate it. Really, we do. We've never had anybody on having this type of discussion, this type of story. So hopefully somebody will watch this and they can maybe reach out to you. Is there a way for them to reach out to you?
Sure, they can. It's Jim Brock at Partners for Paws. My dog website.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Facebook, Jim Brock. They can reach out to me there. Or should I give my email?
We'll put it in the show notes.
It's up to you.
Put it in
Okay.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll put it in the
reach
show
out.
notes. Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Well, again, I'm very grateful to Brent Cassidy for producing the podcast with you first so that I could see it and have you on here. And you've been an inspiration tonight. So I want to thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. And then we're going to have your son on. I think that's a great idea. I think
Absolutely.
he's got his own story to tell, and we'll see how the two work together.
Oh yeah, I think you guys will enjoy talking to him. Yeah.
Well,
thank you
thank you, everybody.
guys, and thank your listeners. I hope I can touch somebody, and I hope they reach out if they need me.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you
Sure.
again. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.